So in making my kinetic sand, I started by mixing cornstarch and sand, like she said in the video. Here's my sand. She didn't say if it had to be like spot or anything like that, so I'm hoping I don't run into a problem with that later on in this experiment, but I did just get regular sand from a volleyball court, so hopefully that works. I'm assuming it'll be the same thing. So I'm gonna do that and then mix my cornstarch with it, so I'll be back. So yeah, basically when you mix the sand and cornstarch together, it just creates a better substance, because like obviously sand is going to make mud once you get it wet. The cornstarch will have those, when it's wet with warm water, those longer molecules, just the cornstarch molecules in general, will start to combine together. So when you add water to it, then basically it makes that sand, because it's a solid, it's still wet, but it's wet enough to stick together, but solid enough that you can like mess with it and play with it, put your fingers through it. Mine was kind of watery towards the bottom, and I think it's just because I poured too much water in it. Basically what she was saying is that we didn't need to use all the water, and you pour a little bit, mix it, and then keep going. I definitely didn't pour a little bit. I poured a generous amount and then mixed it. So it did make the sand. But the only difference was it was a little too watery, so in order for me to fix that, I would basically just add more cornstarch and more sand into it. Like I said, to make it prettier, I'd probably end up using maybe just a different color, not being so cheap about it and just getting free sand from the earth, which, I mean, that's what sand is anyways. I don't know if there's a chemical difference between the sand that we see in the stores versus the sand that I just get, but I'm pretty sure there's no difference at all. It's all the same thing. So with that being said, basically the experiment worked. The water and the soap acted as a surfactant to keep those water molecules good and close together. So that way when we do add all that shit, I'm so sorry, when we add all of that stuff to the sand and the cornstarch, it makes a better kinetic sand. Okay, now that my cornstarch is mixed, I'm gonna go get my water and my soap. So when I mix these two together, basically nothing's really gonna happen, but the soap is gonna act as a surfactant for the water. It'll help those water molecules stick together, so that way when I do pour the water into the cornstarch and sand, it hopefully will bind those and we can see some sort of chemical reaction occurring. So here's a little bit of warm water, and I'll come back when my soap is added. So my soap is added into my water. She said not to add a lot because we're not even going to be using all the water anyways. So I'm going to mix those two together and see what happens. So I'm pouring a little bit of my water into my sand, and then I will mix that together and see what happens. So when I mix my cornstarch, sand, and water and soap together, I do get a little bit of this mixture. It's kind of gross, looks kind of like mud, but as you can see, it kind of picks up a little bit. I'm assuming if I were to add more cornstarch or add more water, the reaction between those two, since they're Newtonian fluids, the water will react with the cornstarch, make it loosen up a little bit before it gets a little bit tighter, and that's where we make that kinetic sand. I think that I would probably feel more comfortable touching this and like messing with it and stuff had I not just gotten actual sand from the volleyball courts, because part of this, it's mixed together so it looks like dirt and there's like rocks in it and things like that. So just using just regular sand from the store, she had colored sand, so I think that would have helped a little bit, but you can see them kind of bind together, and when they stick closely together, that's where that kinetic sand comes from.